Can you recall a time when you were offended? Now, I'm from the Spike Lee era when Do the Right Thing came out. Someone could step on your brand new white tennis shoes and hurt your feelings. So we're not talking about that type of offense. I'm talking about the type of offense that hits you in the core of your belly. It makes your stomach feel queasy. It makes your hands shake. It makes your heart ache. It's the type of offense that makes you question who you are. It makes you question your relationships. For some people in the room, it makes you want to shrink. And for others, it makes you want to rage. Can you recall a time when you felt that type of offended? And perhaps the better question is, could you forgive and forget a time when you've been that type of offended? Like, could you forgive and forget the offense of 100 broken promises? Like a child who sat on the doorstep time after time, waiting for the ever-absent parent to show up? Could you forgive and forget one or two really big offenses, like an assault or a victimization of some kind? Could you forgive and forget if a loved one lied to you repeatedly or stole from you repeatedly? Or if you had a spouse cheat on you repeatedly, could you forgive and forget? I don't know about you, but I've had a hard time with this forgive and forget thing. And research says that nearly half of you may have an experience similar to mine. I have an older brother. He is 6 years older than I, and he's gone to extensive lengths to support a very nasty addiction to crack cocaine. Now that put the rest of us, myself, my loved ones, right in the line of fire, as he tried to get his hands on any dollar or dime that he could find. I've come home from school or work to missing televisions and other electronics, empty piggy banks. The list goes on and on. I remember this one time. I was about 13 years old, and my friend Robin invited me to go to the Bobby Brown concert. Okay, Bobby Brown fans, okay. I remember standing in the Baltimore Arena. This was my very first concert. I was so excited. And I was standing in line, all ready to get myself a My Prerogative t-shirt, only to pull out my wallet and find out that it had been emptied. So by the time I graduated from high school, I had learned to sleep with my wallet or my keys or my purse underneath the pillow. And although there were times when he would just ask for the money directly, there was always this convoluted reason why he needed the money, when he was gonna pay it back, because he never paid it back. And in my teen angst, I was hot, I was pissed, I was filled with rage. I tried to forget him. I tried to just act like I only had one brother instead of two, only for him to return from some stint of jail or rehab and start the process all over again. And I remember thinking to myself, how am I supposed to forget this stuff? And would I ever be able to forgive him? Fast forward to today, I'm a licensed clinical mental health counselor, and I've been doing that for about 20 years. I've worked with people with all sorts of life difficulties, depressions, and anxieties, and offenses just like this. And I myself have been the victim and survivor of domestic violence. When I was about 22 years old, I was married to a man who had a very severe attachment anxiety. At the slightest hint that I might be showing someone else too much attention, or if he thought I might leave him or break up with him, he would escalate to verbal and physical, emotional abuse. And our marriage counselor at the time seemed to employ this forgive and forget strategy. That made no sense to me. So one day, as my husband's walking out the door, fussing and cussing about something, I called the marriage counselor on the phone, and I was like, I don't understand. I can't do this. How am I supposed to forgive and forget something if it keeps happening? Now, this was well over 20 years ago, but he told me two simple words that continue to resonate with me today. So my question, how do you forgive and forget something if it keeps happening? He said, you don't. Let's just sit with that one for a moment. You don't forgive and forget something if it keeps happening. Like, forgive and forget? Like, where did this phrase come from anyway? Like, whose idea was this? Because as a trauma therapist, I'm keenly aware of the fact that these type of offenses sit deep in your nervous system. And it starts in our brain. Our brain is hardwired to store and retrieve information. It becomes biological data. And researchers tell us that there are some traumatic experiences we'll never forget as an adaptive outcome. It's like there's a little sticky note sitting on your brain that tells you, hey, don't forget this, because it could save your life one day. So if remembering is stuck in us, like biological data, if the cumulative sticky notes keep showing up, if the cumulative offenses keep happening, when forgetting is out of the question, how are we supposed to forgive? Through my own personal offenses and counseling people over the years, I realized that for me, for this type of forgiveness, for these type of offenses, I needed some distance. It was 3 steps for me that helped me on my path to forgiveness: physical distance, emotional distance, and intellectual distance. Now, step 1, physical distance, is pretty self-explanatory. Like, if you're not in my personal red carpet bubble to do me hurt, harm, or danger, then physical distance allows me a sense of physical safety. Now, you just have to decide, how much physical distance do you need? Do you need to move into the next bedroom type of physical distance, or do you need to pack your things and go across state lines type physical distance? Choice is yours. In one of my favorite movies, Forrest Gump, Jenny told Forrest, don't try to be a hero, Forrest. If you're in danger, just run, Forrest, run. So you get to employ the Forrest Gump strategy to physical distance and physical safety. Now, step 2 is emotional distance. Emotional distance are the actions we take to manage the emotional residue of the experiences that we've had. Because remember, even though you've changed your physical environment, you've now taken your nervous system with you. So you continue to feel all of the things that don't feel so good to feel. In this stage, people tend to go on a numb and suppressed journey. They don't want to feel it. If you think about Jenny from Forrest Gump, she had some personal traumas. She had some childhood traumas. She tried to move away. She tried to drink it away. She tried to smoke it away. She tried to sex it away. She tried to do all of the things to suppress her nervous system. So you've got to remember that with emotional distance, the goal is to get a healthy sense of emotional security. Think about your therapies and your medication, maybe support groups, maybe even mediation with the person who offended you in the first place. The goal is emotional, healthy security. Now, after some physical distance and some emotional distance on this path to forgiveness, I still needed a little more distance. Intellectual distance. Intellectual distance is the transition of mindset away from victimization and hurt. Because of the offenses we've experienced, it's hard to see your situation with fresh eyes. It's hard to see your experience or even your offender with a fresh perspective. Okay, Forrest Gumpers, remember Lieutenant Dan? Okay. Lieutenant Dan was mad at the world. He wanted to die in the Vietnam War like his father before him and the father before him and the father before him, but Forrest Gump saved his life. So he's mad at the world, fussing and cussing, angry all the time. I was supposed to die as Lieutenant Dan. And Forrest Gump told him, but you're still Lieutenant Dan. It's that transition of mindset, that transition of perspective that allows you to release the pain that you've been stuck in, only to view the rest of your life differently moving forward. Now for me, with my brother, intellectual distance allowed me to consider as if he were a client. As a counselor, I'm very much aware of the depths of addiction, the cycle that's physiologically demanding on the body. Not to mention the underlying depressions or anxieties or traumas or self-esteem issues that might be fueling that cycle of addiction. And it dawned on me one day that perhaps, just maybe my brother has enough to deal with in managing his cycle of addiction that he didn't need my anger and rage and attitude on top of it. Managing the cycle of addiction is a heavy enough burden by itself. It's the slightest shift in my perspective that allowed me a sense of compassion and a little step closer on that path to forgiveness. That revelation also made me realize, as horrible as it was being a victim in my own home by a family member, that I wasn't a victim of my brother. I was a victim of addiction. Again, a step closer to a sense of compassion and understanding that got me on the pathway to forgiveness. By definition, I realized that forgiveness is the emotional capacity to allow someone to be whoever it is they're going to be, even if they'll never be what we want them to be or need them to be. Now, if I were trying to erase all of the sticky notes in your head that tell you you're supposed to forgive and forget, I say let's replace it with recover and rediscover. So physical distance and emotional distance allows us to recover from the personal offenses and lead us to a place of healthy emotional security, while intellectual distance allows us to rediscover a sense of compassion and understanding on the pathway to forgiveness. And I stand here today with forgiveness in my heart. I have peace in my mind. I can rehash, I can relive, I can recall, I can remember, not forget the emotional experiences that I had without all of the emotional residue attached to it. I can do that today because I discovered a pathway to forgiveness using distance. Thank you.